Welcome to Going Green, coming to you today from the first WHO Global Conference on Air Pollution and Health in Geneva. Our guest today says that part of the success story of Europe and Switzerland is that we outsource our air pollution to low-income countries where governments have very lax, if any, air quality regulations. I speak to Nico Künzli from the Swiss Tropical and Public Health Institute about the action that should be taken. Nico, in your speech here, you quoted WHO Director General Tedros saying that air pollution is the new tobacco. What does this mean exactly?
Well, tobacco from a health perspective is of course a very, very major, big issue, causing a lot of deaths and diseases on a global scale. So using that comparison, of course, Dr. Tedros refers to the fact that air pollution has also a huge burden on people's health on a global scale. It's depending on countries, actually the burden is almost the same, like smoking, like tobacco. The comparison is also interesting because the effects from air pollution are very similar to those observed from smoking, because indeed smoking is also combustion and results in similar types of pollution. Of course, smoking is a much bigger pollution than inhaling the air around us.
So it is like smoking cigarettes and a lot every day, but is this problem actually on the rise, Nico?
Air pollution, it depends where you look. We are very fortunate here in Switzerland, in Middle Europe, thanks to very strong policies. There has been a lot of improvements in air quality over the last 30 years. If you go elsewhere, if you go to Asia, Africa, you see the opposite trends. In fact, it's even worse. Those places, megacities, have very high pollution and things get even worse year by year. So
one of your key points, Nico, is that Western Europe and the US are outsourcing their air pollution to low-income and developing countries to accommodate our luxury lifestyle and breathing fresh air. What kind of evidence do you have?
Well, there has been a very, very large study done, actually published in Nature in about 1 year ago or 2 years ago. What they have done is they looked into the production of goods and how they cause air pollution, using particles as the marker for air pollution. And actually they have looked where is production happening, where are things moved, where are the goods moved, where is the consumption, where is the pollution. And this study quantifies all these very difficult, complex ways all around the globe with the globalized economy. And it's very clear there. The Western countries are those who export or let air pollution happen elsewhere, mainly in Asia, to accommodate their lifestyle.
But are there not enough international standards and regulations to help fight this problem?
Well, that of course would be the right answer, yeah. And in fact there we have still a long way to go. WHO assesses the scientific evidence every 5 to 10 years and proposes how regulations should look like in the countries. And these are the air quality guidelines. And then the governments should adopt those guidelines as a regulation,
but
as a law.
But this is all wishful thinking. They should, you say. You use the verb should, right?
Well, if you look, there are a few countries like Switzerland who follow those propositions, but there are many, many countries who still have zero regulations or very, very poor regulations. And of course in Africa or in Asia you see that, and this is a huge problem because it creates an inequity in the regulations, which of course a globalized economy is playing with. So of course industries go where pollution is cheaper than, for example, in Switzerland. So that's exactly what this study has shown, how we produce. The dirty production is done in places where we don't have regulations.
And which are some of the best of class examples? You know, which countries and governments are leading the way in the fight against air pollution?
Well, the local fight against air pollution, in fact, the race for clean air, I would say, is a race that is very successfully happening in Western countries since about 30 years. I mean, if you look, fantastic examples like California. I mean, Los Angeles has been famous for air pollution for decades. And if you look today, Los Angeles today has a better air than what we had in the city of Basel like 20 years ago. It's incredible improvement, very strong force of putting science into policy and action. And of course, Switzerland has is a very good example as well. Europe, Western Europe, even Eastern Europe has improved. So all the wealthier countries see a lot of improvement in air quality over the last 30 years.
Well, if we talk about Switzerland, of course, the Swiss are very proud of the clean air and the blue skies. Tourists love them as well. The postcards, you know, it's just like very picturesque as well. But you're saying that we actually don't really deserve it because we offshore so much of the air pollution elsewhere.
Well, I would not say we don't deserve it. We deserve it. It's fantastic to have those policies, but we should make sure and actually support those countries with the expertise on how to do that. Of course, there is a huge expertise in Switzerland how to improve air quality in the cities in the country, and that is a very important expertise we should export instead. And there we really have a problem. Instead, Swiss companies, like other Western companies, what they do is ignoring what we have as standards set at home. They ignore those in other countries. So they go, for example, in Africa, and they sell fuel, diesel fuel, which would completely be out of our legal ranges in Switzerland, and they just sell those very, very dirty diesel in Africa because there it's still legally possible. So of course they kill people down there with the pollution.
If you say that the Western multinationals are, you know, outsourcing the pollution abroad, that otherwise they would violate environmental laws and standards back at home, if you talk to these companies, what kind of reaction do you get?
Well, I personally haven't talked to the companies. I mean,
shouldn't you talk to the companies when you have allegations like this?
Well, you know, we are scientists and we look into the health effect of air pollution. And as a scientist, I try to assist the government in, let's say, in advising them how to do the policy making. You're right, maybe we should also discuss with the industries, but of course they act on a very different scale, and I'm actually emphasizing they act legally. So it is legally possible to sell diesel in Africa with 360 or 600 times higher sulfur content than what we would allow in Switzerland. So it's not illegal, it's just a question of maximizing your profits in a business that is globally organized the way it is currently. And that's why I'm really very much promoting the idea that we should globalize air quality standards. It doesn't make sense that we in Switzerland follow the standards that protect health, and in Africa they use completely other standards.
This is actually called African quality, and you also say that Swiss commodity traders, they blend, quote, the poorest possible diesel quality for African countries with lax sulfur regulations. How big is this problem still? And, you know, with digital and social media, are we not more aware and able to fight these problems?
Well, you know, this study just came out about 2 or 3 years ago from the Swiss NGO Public Eye, who have investigated on that. It made a huge impact, of course, in the discussions also on social media, no doubt, because it was not known before. And it is a very, very smart system, I have to say, that you go and blend 40 different types of qualities to accommodate to what the market is allowing in selling in quality. So yes, they call that African quality, and they sell it to the African cities, and of course that is the cause why these cities stink from this soot. I mean, the sulfur content in the diesel is a very strong determinant of the air pollution that comes out of the tailpipes. So these cities are really they have a huge problem. I mean, they are very much under pressure of getting very high pollution from these dirty cars which are filled with dirty gasoline.
You mentioned that this toxic and dirty air in African megacities is causing millions of sick people on the continent. So what concrete action should be taken in corporate Switzerland as well?
I think we should work on, also on the international level, on globalizing environmental standards. Standards for ambient air quality, emission standards, and make sure that the best available technology is used everywhere.
With the Paris climate deal, do you see a beginning of that debate and discussion? Is there something in there already, or are we still at the very beginning of this whole discussion?
Well, the climate debate, of course, has triggered more global discussions, because there it's very, very evident that the problem is a global one and not a local one. But there is still a lot to do, and particularly in air pollution regulation, there is an enormous gap between what we know and what has been adopted in the regulations in the countries around the globe.
Here in Switzerland as well, things are moving slowly. There is the initiative for responsible business as well. What kind of hopes are you pinning on that? Do you think it's a step in the right direction?
Yes, definitely. I think it's definitely a step in the right direction, because it forces at least our globalized companies to act responsible also when they do business abroad. And I think we should go for that. And of course, we should hope that Europe and the whole international community will go for such standards.
What kind of other measures do you think should Switzerland take, and the governments that you're working with, in finding an international regulation that applies to each country and corporation in the world?
Actually, one thing I feel like we haven't profited enough, used enough so far. Switzerland has an enormous experience in how to improve air quality, how to keep the air pretty clean over the last 20, 30, 40 years. So we have excellent experts in the federal agencies, in the county agencies, in the cities. I mean, they have worked very hard over the last 30 years to improve the conditions. And that is an expertise, together with the technology, top-notch technology, clean technology. That's an expertise we should really export. We should sell that. We should assist other countries in how to do that, because it's easy. What I'm telling you, it's easy to say, well, air pollution kills people. We know that. We have the science. But to then make a change, of course, you need to do a lot of different things. There are little steps. There are bigger steps, bigger decisions, regulations, and you have to know how to do that. And there, I think Switzerland would have fantastic, really something to sell.
A change in mindset doesn't come easy, isn't it? Now, if we take more, tougher regulations and come up with new jurisdictions and so on here in Switzerland, is there not a risk as well that a lot of big multinationals and commodity traders would move outside and set up their headquarters elsewhere?
I'm not concerned about that. I think there is a need for some ethical standards in doing business globally, and I'm sure somehow people will move in that direction anyway. So I don't think that this is a major issue, in fact.
A lot of car makers here in Europe, like Daimler and Renault, Nissan, they claim that their diesel engines are nowadays very close to gas. Do you agree with that they are getting cleaner as well?
Well, I mean, it is definitely true that the engines of the diesel cars have become far cleaner over the last 30 years. So the most modern type of diesel car they sell today, yes, I mean, these are very clean engines. I think the story with the diesel, we should not forget. I mean, there has been a long opposition exactly by those industries and by the governments to improve the situation. I mean, people have fought against the regulation that requires putting particle filters on a diesel car. and we still suffer from the consequences of that. So there are still diesel cars out in the streets in our car fleets that are not equipped with diesel filters.
So Daimler boss Dieter Zetsche actually said recently that diesel cars still have a future. So would you agree with him on that point in that case?
Well, I'm more a user and consumer. I cannot judge about that. What I would say, the car makers should also take responsibility to sell the cleanest engines globally. And I mean, this is another example I can make you. There is a German car maker. They have decided to invest in Iran, and guess what their negotiation was with Iran, with the government? The negotiation was, yes, they will invest into new plants in Iran, but under the condition that they can sell heavy-duty vehicles, trucks from Germany that are not equipped with diesel particle filters.
Now, here
and
in
I mean,
Switzerland,
this is we talk about today. This is not 20 years ago.
right. Here in Switzerland, Nino, we still drive a lot of SUVs, gas guzzling cars, etc. Why do people here not drive more electric vehicles?
Well, SUVs are particularly a problem of size as well. It's absolutely no need that people drive around with such big cars. So this is, of course, also from a climate perspective a no-go. And of course, this is how the industry makes the business.
Before we go, Nino, do you drive a car yourself, or did you take the train to come here to Geneva?
All the times we lived in Europe, I have never owned a car. It would be so boring to have a car. I have access to mobility cars. I have catch a car in Basel. I have every options together with the train, so we really don't need a car and we don't want a car. Of course, we lived also in the US, and there the first thing you have to do to survive in California is to buy a car.
Nino, thank you so much for your time and joining us on Going Green.
Yes, you're welcome. It was a pleasure. Thank you.